Hey guys, I'm joined by my friend Eric.
How's it going, everybody? I'm back.
Last year we did a top 10 video of our favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series, a show that was very near and dear to both of our hearts. The show was created by Bruce Timm and based on the DC Comics character created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger. In that video, I decided to exclude episodes of the new Batman Adventures because I kind of wanted to count it as its own separate series. The new Batman Adventures was basically a continuation of Batman the Animated Series. I believe it aired from 1997 to 1999, and on home video it's repackaged as the fourth season of Batman the Animated Series. Now, we should probably talk about, like, the basic arc of this show. Basically, it's set, like, I want to say a year or two after the events of Batman the Animated Series, maybe 2 or 3 years.
I don't know the full details of it, but I've always interpreted that it takes place as a sequel series, pretty much, to the original Batman the Animated Series. A couple of years have gone by from Season 3 to Season 4, for sure.
The show aired around the same time as Superman the Animated Series, and because the two shows are in the same continuity, you do get some crossover.
Yeah.
Basically, at this point in the timeline, Batgirl has become a bigger part of the Bat family. Dick Grayson has gone his separate ways from Batman and has become the vigilante Nightwing. And now there's a new Robin, Tim Drake. And also, this series does a lot of, like, redesigns to the characters.
Yeah.
Some work and a lot don't work.
Don't.
I think the two biggest ones that annoy the crap out of me is the redesign of Jim Gordon and the redesign of Joker.
Yeah, you said that. For me, it's the Joker also. The kind of notorious, if you listen to the commentaries, they call him the Mickey Mouse Joker because they got rid of, like, the pupils and all that. It's just like, yeah, he looks exactly like Mickey Mouse pretty much. And I would say, like, I think I was telling you before, Catwoman to me, her redesign is really weird to me.
It's weird, but I will say when you see her unmasked and you see her with the dark hair, I do like dark-haired Selena Kyle better than blonde-haired
Selena Kyle's beautiful regardless, but I think she's better with the black hair, personally.
Another weird redesign is they redesigned Penguin, and like in the earlier seasons, Penguin is deformed, but here he looks like a normal human, just kind of fat.
He looks like he got some kind of surgery that smoothed out everything.
Yeah.
He's like a legit businessman.
Yeah.
Legit businessman.
I am a legitimate businessman now.
With the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah. But what do you think of new Batman Adventures overall before we actually get into our favorite episodes?
I've always enjoyed Season 4. I've always enjoyed Season 4. Looking back on it now, though, it was kind of interesting because when I rewatched the episodes and everything, going through to prepare for this video and everything, I remember as a kid, like, getting kind of creeped out, and I was kind of a little turned off. I still enjoyed it, but I was a little turned off by some of the redesigns and all that kind of stuff. But looking back now, watching it again nowadays, though, like, I kind of appreciate it more now. I would still say I think it's the weakest season out of the entire series overall, but especially at the very beginning, like the first, like, 5 episodes are pretty, like, really good. And I was, what I meant by, like, it got, like, kind of, it fell off. I really liked the character connections and the direction that they were kind of going. Like we were talking about before we started recording, that, like, it's interesting that I felt like they took, like, Batman in this, like, drill sergeant, colder
that's something
persona.
That's something I forgot to mention is Batman's a bit more of an asshole here than he is in TAS.
Yeah. And I think it contributes to, like, the passage of time from Season 3 to Season 4, where I think he's much older, he's getting closer to that retirement of Batman and stuff like that. And he even says in one of the episodes that, like, I intended for all this to be passed down to you, the Bat family, when between Batgirl, Nightwing, and Tim Drake. But like that kind of direction and the clashes, I'd say, with our heroes in this season, I think is what really stands out in this. And I wish they kind of went that direction a little bit more. Where there's a couple episodes here and there which will spoilers potentially be in our favorite lists. But in my opinion, like those were like the best episodes where this season kind of hit the best and hit its peak, you know. And unfortunately, it does that for some episodes, and then others it just takes like weird directions, which in some I appreciated, and then other ideas where it's like one particular episode that is notoriously bad that literally everyone, and I believe even the commentators, were like, yeah, we kind of messed up on this one. Baby Dolan Croc.
Yeah, that episode sucks.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because it's a sequel to one of my absolute favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and that's how you follow that up.
It's an odd combo. I appreciate. I will say, I guess I appreciate the attempt, but it's one of those situations where it's like that was one of the turnouts where I was like, why type of thing, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I kind of stand on. What's your opinion on season 4 overall?
Yeah, I think it's decent. It's not as good as Batman the Animated Series, but I think it's a solid follow-up to Batman the Animated Series, and honestly, there were quite a few really strong episodes in this.
100%.
Now, before we get on to our top 10 list, we should probably address sort of an elephant in the room about two of the voice actors from this show. Yeah. In the time since we did our video on Batman the Animated Series...
Two more
voice actors from this show passed away. Richard Ball, who played the voice of Two-Face, and Arlene Sorkin, who voiced Harley Quinn.
The original Harley Quinn.
Yeah, which is a damn shame.
Yeah, what can be said? I mean, Arlene Sorkin brought the character to life. In fact, Paul Dini was inspired by like Arlene Sorkin's like old comedy stand-ups. Pretty much that's what she was playing. That's what inspired the character and everything. And Tara Strong does an incredible job with Harley Quinn and Margaret Robbie too. But like to us, we grew up on Arlene Sorkin, and I even remember when Arkham City came out and Tara Strong took over. She again did a good job, but I remember like some fans being like, that was kind of like a jump. Like to me, Arlene is Harley Quinn. Like that voice is just iconic.
Yeah.
And I like the new interpretations of her. Oh yeah, and even what's her name from Big Bang Theory. But to me, Arlene Sorkin is just just like again a lot of like the voices from this show. Like to me, a lot of this, pretty much everything with this show is to me like the definitive Batman interpretation of the material.
Yeah.
And to me, those are the voices that I hear when I read the comics. You know, you know, what everyone has said, every Batman fan has said for all these years now, for as long as this show has existed. You know, pretty much, it's the ultimate interpretation. And yeah, and Two-Face too. Like, I think even Troy Baker like is basically doing an impression of the animated series Two-Face, and going back, like some of those episodes, his introduction is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If there's a life after this, hopefully, Kevin Conroy and them are up in heaven, maybe voicing Batman shows that are being made in heaven right now.
God, you have phenomenal talent to be entertained up there.
So, we're going to do my list first. My number 10 is Double Talk, which features the Ventriloquist, who's not one of my favorite villains, but what I really appreciate about this episode is we actually see a legitimate redemption for one of Batman's enemies. And I liked how in this episode... I also liked how in this episode we see that Batman actually does try to rehabilitate his enemies. I think he understands a lot of the villains he fights.
Wesker's off limits.
He understands that a lot of the villains he fights are legitimately mentally ill, and he's trying, even though he beats the shit out of them when he's Batman, you see that he does legitimately want to see some of his enemies be redeemed. He wants to see his enemies be rehabilitated, and that is what I appreciate about the episode. And you feel so bad for the poor guy.
Yeah.
Like, you think he's cured, and it seems that he is, but he's starting to hear that voice again. Like, is the split personality coming back, or or is it somebody trying to make him
I
crazy
will
again?
say that is the one little hiccup with the episode, I feel like, where the goon... Are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah.
So the spoiler aspect to it is that the goons of their old gang was basically making Wesker break again by bringing back Scarface, and so whenever some of the sequences are freaking awesome, like when Wesker's talking to Scarface on the phone and everything. Turns out the whole explanation is that the goons is the goons are basically making that happen, and it's just weird because it doesn't really make any sense that they were able to replicate Scarface's voice when he was talking to him, because that's what's kind of implied in the episode.
Yeah.
So in that little hiccup, I totally get, but overall though, the message about the mental, mental health and rehabilitation and redemption. That's why I love this episode so much. I really like that Bruce Wayne was really trying to help Wesker out there, and it's a really nice episode, and yeah, it's
All right. My number 9 is Never Fear, which features the Scarecrow, and of all the redesigns,
yes.
the Scarecrow is easily the best redesign they did. This is the
100%.
best the character looked on the animated series.
100%.
It also
100%.
doesn't hurt that you have the great Jeffrey Combs voicing Scarecrow in this episode,
Yeah.
and he gives the Scarecrow such a scary voice.
Yep.
Like, he legitimately feels like a horror movie villain in this episode.
Looks like he doesn't even have a face. He has a noose around his neck. It's such a cool design, and the voice just peak.
Yeah. The basic premise is there are certain people in Gotham City who are performing these death-defying stunts, and we find out it's because they no longer have any fear.
Yeah.
And it turns out this is all a plot by Jonathan Crane, or the Scarecrow, to basically take every citizen of Gotham City's fear away, which might seem like not a bad thing, but when you don't have fear, you take unnecessary risks, and this is basically his plot to bring chaos to the city.
Yes, and it's again, this is an episode on my list too, and for those reasons. And for me, in my personal life, like, I've kind of never experienced like anxiety and stuff like that ever up until like recently. So that's something I've been dealing with personally, and this episode has always speak to me about that because of that aspect where it's like one of the things I'm trying to work on my personal life is having more confidence within myself and not be as fearful for like taking risks and stuff like that within life. But this episode kind of proves that having a little bit of fear is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that fear of like not crossing that line, you know, in a Batman sense. Like what's great about it is that it basically takes away that line that Batman doesn't cross. Looking back on it, when I watched it this week, I'm like, oh crap, the scene when Bruce Wayne, Batman, gets infected by the toxin, and Scarecrow sticks a bunch of like crocodiles or alligators after him and everything, and so he goes underwater. He basically wrestles the crocodile underwater, and then it's an overhead shot of the lake, and you just see blood start leaking out from the pond, and then Bruce Wayne then gets back up. Like I'm like, oh crap! Like Batman legitimately killed those things, and he killed like 4 crocodiles all by himself. I'm like, oh crap! So I'm like, and as a kid, like that totally went over my head and all that. So, on a personal level, and just like knowing the character and everything, like it really this is one of those episodes that it really like kind of flips the whole Batman material on its head a little bit, and it's a great episode of Tim Drake stepping up, and like, you know, a kid his age and everything. If I was in his shoes, I'd be, you know, pooping my pants of like I just lassoed up Batman, and I basically told him, no, stay down. You're insane right now. So awesome Tim Drake episode, awesome like subject matter and all that, and like I said, it hits me on a personal level with kind of justifying a little bit where it's like it's okay to have a little bit of paranoia, a little bit of fear in you, because it's good to have that. It shouldn't be all risk all the time type of thing, you know? And I think that's an important subject matter to discuss, personally.
My number 8 is Sins of the Father, which it's not the episode that introduces the Tim Drake Robin, because I think this is the second episode, and he was introduced the episode before, but this is the episode that...
How he comes into Batman's tutelage.
Mm-hmm. Now, it should be noted that in the comics, Jason Todd is actually the second Robin, and Tim Drake is actually the third Robin.
Yeah.
But in the continuity of the show, they made Tim Drake the second Robin.
They kind of combined the two a little bit.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And this is also a great Two-Face episode. Two-Face is my favorite Batman villain, so it was great having Two-Face as the main antagonist of this episode. Basically, in the episode, we follow Tim Drake, who's like, you know, kind of a juvenile delinquent, and his father is a gangster who is working for Two-Face, and long story short, Two-Face basically kills Tim Drake's father, and Tim Drake wants revenge, and...
Tim Drake kind of fell into Batman's lap, in a sense, because he was investigating Two-Face and the whole thing, and then Tim Drake just happened to be in the middle of it. Batman comes in, and there was a scuffle, Batman gets injured and all that, and then he brings Tim Drake back to the Batcave.
But also, what I like about this episode is it also shows kind of how far gone Harvey Dent is now, because, like, there's that part where Harvey Dent's basically threatening to kill everybody in Gotham City with those chemicals. And you have Batgirl say he wouldn't. Like, it just shows how... he's lost. He's completely lost, you know?
Tim Drake basically saved the day, like, Two-Face basically beat Batman and Batgirl at that point. And another thing too is that what I liked about it too is that Tim Drake was kind of like this directionless punk, you know, but, you know, kind of like a little like pickpocketer and stuff like that. I liked that aspect of his character a little bit, where he's kind of like dirty, kind of like an Oliver Twist type of thing, and then gets brought into Batman's tutelage after he lost his parents and everything. That I again, like I said in the last video, I'm pretty sure I said that when it came to the animated series, no matter what season it was, origin stories is one of their best suits. Like, if they're doing an origin story for one of the characters, they just seem to knock it out of the park. And in my opinion, this just continued that trend. And honestly, like, this is one of my favorite Robins ever. Like, he's up there next to, like, Dick Grayson, maybe even better than Dick Grayson at times.
My number 7, in speaking of Robin, is Old Wounds, and this is the episode where we find out why Dick Grayson basically left the Bat family, why he went his separate ways from Batman.
And it's a doozy.
Yeah, and we realize Batman is kind of a fucking asshole. In this episode, we find out that Batman might have went a little too far in interrogating one of the Joker's henchmen, because he was interrogating the guy right in front of his family, scaring the guy's kid. And this created a lot of tension between Dick Grayson and Batman. This tension reached a boiling point when Dick Grayson found out that Barbara Gordon, who, in the show's continuity he was dating, is actually Batgirl, which Batman already knew, which he felt he was keeping a secret from him. This basically causes him to punch Batman out and quit being Robin.
Phenomenal episode with everything that happens, you know, and Robin quitting Batman is just an incredible moment. He punches him in the face. Like, jeez. And then it takes Tim Drake to bring him back, finally. It again, like, these episodes with the Bat family clashing and then coming back together is just so good stuff. Really good stuff.
My number 6, and it's a cliche, but it's Mad Love. Mad Love basically officially explains the origins of Harley Quinn.
Yep.
And the episode, while it does have some silly stuff in it, the episode is actually a really sad commentary on abusive relationships. And, it's a great episode. There's a reason this episode is, like, considered by a lot of fans to be, like, one of the best.
Yeah. And the way it plays out is just unexpected. Like, even Batman admits it, that Harley Quinn got closer to defeating the Batman than the Joker ever did.
Yeah.
And he's like, I had no choice. Your ego had to save me. That was his only option.
Yeah.
And it was Harley Quinn of all people. This was done better than what happens in Suicide Squad, the video game. Just for the record, this is Harley Quinn done right. No offense to Tara Strong, but yeah, Harley Quinn's capable. But tangent aside, yeah, agreed 100%. And with abusive relationships and everything, like you feel bad for Harley, but at the same time, you're like, just like how did she fall for this guy?
Yeah.
You know, and what more can be said? It's one of those iconic episodes. It doesn't seem like it's a crazy episode, but the context overall about it, like, it's a fairly simple episode going forward, but like you said, the subject matter that it deals with, I think is just elevates the material. Like, you feel so awful for Harley in this episode, and especially when she's trying to, like, get Joker's attention, the Joker's just, like, passing her off. I'm sorry. It's just, you feel so bad for her.
My number 5 is Over the Edge, and basically in this episode, and we will get into spoilers, but in the beginning, it appears that Batgirl died, and Jim Gordon finds out that Batgirl was his daughter, Barbara Gordon, and now he vows revenge against Batman, and that's really all I want to say about the episode. I know it's on your list, so maybe when you talk about it on your list, we'll go into the spoilers.
Okay.
But this episode really does have the feel of... In the comics, they do what's known as Elseworlds, which are stories that are specifically
what-if
set...
stories.
Yeah, they're what-if stories. They're stories that are specifically set outside of continuity, where the writers could do whatever the hell they want with the characters, and that's kind of what...
It makes it so awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what this episode feels like. And the biggest letdown of this episode is the twist at the end. At the same time, I don't know any other way they would have explained how this is happening.
That's the weakest part of it? You think?
I don't know. I mean, you'll talk about it more on your list.
Stay tuned.
But it's a good episode. It's a really, really good episode. And it's an episode that, like, if you don't know what's going to happen, it's definitely, like,
It's a banger. It's a banger episode for sure.
Alright, my number 4 is Mean Seasons, which is basically about this villain called the Calendar Girl, who's, like, going after people who work in, like, the fashion industry, and we eventually find out she was a model who was basically fired for getting too old, and I think the episode is actually a really good commentary and criticism of the beauty industry and what it does to the models, like, how it can create, like, give them these self-esteem issues, or, like, give them, like, the whole body dysmorphia thing, like, and it's actually, like, it's a sad freaking episode, even though it, like, has, being a Batman episode, it has silly moments, but the ending is genuinely pretty sad, and you do find yourself feeling sorry for this character.
For context, for what Christian's talking about, is that even, like, the character design, because the character design, she's wearing, like, this, like, plaid white Michael Myers like mask and the whole thing, and at the end of the episode, spoilers, the cops take the mask off, and it turns out there's nothing wrong with her. Theoretically, like, she looks the same as her beautiful, prime, even at the age that she's at, but she's like, I'm ugly, and I even unfortunately this episode didn't make my list, but I did consider it, because I was like, with all the things that you said with the context, but I also look at another potential thing for mental health with that as well, because unreasonable beauty standards and stuff like that, and I know that's a subject matter that we talk about a lot nowadays too, and that the fashion industry does put a lot of pressure in a lot of people, and I agree with you. I think it's a very good episode of a criticism towards that industry, because I'm personally not a fan of, like, the pressures that they put on it, and even, like, they go into it, like, some actresses too, with, like, the plastic surgery. There's a whole can of worms that goes into it, but I'm happy that this episode kind of goes after that a little bit. It didn't make my personal cut, but I acknowledge that it was one of those surprises where I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually really good. And I was even confused too, because I thought this was like, I thought it was strange a little bit that it was like a different interpretation of another Batman character, the Calendar Man. like a different interpretation of that, but I don't think it has any relation. And I actually really like what they did with this character.
Yeah. So my number 3 is Judgment Day, which was actually the final episode of this particular series, and basically this is about a vigilante called the Judge who is going after criminals in Gotham City, but is a lot more extreme than Batman is, and he seems to specifically be targeting Two-Face. That's all I want to say about the episode, but this is a really good one. If you want
to go deeper into it, it did not make my list, so if you want to go deeper into it, totally fine with that.
Okay, so the twist is the Judge was Two-Face, and Harvey Dent created a third personality. I think just because he hated what he became so much that he created this third personality basically to destroy the Two-Face personality. But, I think by the end, Two-Face's fate is kind of left ambiguous. You don't know what's going to become of him.
I actually did not rewatch that episode. Interesting. Because I guess I think I got it confused with another episode, where I thought I thought I knew the twist, which was it was probably in one of the earlier episodes in the previous seasons, but I thought it was like an Arkham security guard or something like that became the Judge.
No, you're thinking of Lockup.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of, because I thought that was that episode, so that's why I didn't really look into it. But I probably should have watched that episode. Fuck, my bad.
Yeah.
But that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a good episode. It's a really good episode, and it's sad that technically this is the last time we see this version of Two-Face. But at the same time, it's almost kind of a fitting conclusion as well for the character. My number 2 is Growing Pains.
That one's on my list.
Basically, this episode is about Tim Drake meets this teenage girl who's on the run from this man, and we don't really know why she's running from this man, but this man's going after her. The girl doesn't even remember who she is.
It's a very good mystery story.
Let's just say, when we find out who she is and the ending, it's fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's on my list, so I'll talk about the spoilers.
Yeah. This episode will definitely make you cry in the end.
It's upsetting.
My number 1 is Legends of the Dark Knight, and basically this episode's actually based on a Batman comic from the 70s called The Batman Nobody Knows, which is one of my favorite Batman comics, but basically it's about a group of kids who are just hanging out, talking about who they think Batman is, and then you get little vignettes of each of them given their own interpretations of Batman.
Yeah.
So you have one that's very much inspired by the old Bill Finger, Dick Sprang Batman, and kind of the Adam West Batman as well.
A little bit too, yeah.
And then you have a segment that's based on Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which is awesome.
Which is pretty awesome, yeah.
You also have a pretty... you have a joke about Joel Schumacher in this, which is pretty hilarious, but maybe by today's standards would be considered a little...
Shots fired.
Yeah, just because... the only reason I'm saying it might be a little problematic by today's standards is because the kid's clearly gay, and Joel Schumacher was gay, and it almost seemed like they were trying to make some kind of gay joke with that.
Unfortunately, this episode didn't make my list, but I had a kook with it. It was a funny episode. Reminds me of the other anime Batman Gotham Knight, I think. No, yeah,
yes. This was
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree. Like the Dark Knight Returns one was pretty cool to see in like an animated adaptation. Looking back on it now, because I didn't really remember that episode as a kid, and then rewatching, I'm like, oh man, now I know where this is coming from. So, it was a good little episode, but didn't make my list personally.
So, now on to Eric's list, and as you can probably tell, there's a lot of overlap between our two lists, so...
There's a couple clashes where we...
Yeah, we're basically going to be talking about some of the same episodes again.
Yeah. So, my number 10 was Holiday Nights, the first episode of Season 4. And basically, this episode is a bunch of like little short stories with like some individual characters that it kind of focuses on. So like the first bit of it is Harley and Poison Ivy decide we want to go on a shopping spree for Christmas. Harley specifically wants a Christmas tree, and Poison obviously objects to that. But they basically kidnap Bruce Wayne, go to like one of his parties and hypnotize him. He's just spending all of his money on them, and eventually he breaks out, and that's pretty much how that bit of the episode goes. Then the second bit, it takes place in a I think like a mall or something like that, and basically what convinced me to put this episode on the list is the idea of Harvey Bullock, the police officer, doing a side hustle as a walk-in Santa Claus.
Yeah. Well, it's not
with Montoya being one of the elves.
Well, it's not even a side hustle. He's basically undercover because they're like keeping an eye out for
shoplifters and all. And and it turns into a little fight with Clayface at the end. Yeah. But like that bit alone, just Harvey Bullock as a fake Santa, and he comes across like a kid that he busted the kid's father, and he's like, "Man, Montoya, I feel really bad because I busted the kid's dad. Here you go, kid, buy something nice." And I love the levity. Harvey Bullock is an asshole sometimes, but I love when his levity shows through sometimes. He's a hard ass sometimes, but that's what I just love about Bullock so much. And I want more Harvey Bullock in my Batman life, to be honest. And again, like Montoya too, like she's awesome too. The last bit of it, Joker threatens Gotham with like a sonic boomer weapon thing, which is kind of but it's a fun little episode. Oh, what gets me is apparently every Christmas, every New Year's or something like that.
New Year's.
Commissioner Gordon and Batman share a coffee every year, and that really, those little moments is why this episode is on my number 10. Even though there's probably a couple episodes that I probably should have put over it, but I really love when the side characters, especially in this show, get some prop up, you know? And I really, rewatching it, I'm like, this is so nice. It was so nice to see like these little character moments that's like Batman and Commissioner Gordon sharing a coffee and him trying to beat him to the bill. Harvey Bullock and Montoya being, Christmas Santa Claus. It just good little stuff here and there with the little characters in between. So that's what I loved about Holiday Nights. What did you think of that episode, if anything?
Oh, it sucks.
Fuck you then.
I actually, no, it's a good episode. I like it. Yeah. It's a solid episode.
Way to kick me when I'm down. Not a good start, I guess. Well, that was my number 10. So my number 9 episode is Animal Acts. It's the episode where Dick Grayson goes back to his old carnival roots, literally his old band, and it turns out that the Mad Hatter has hypnotized all the circus animals there. And Dick Grayson kind of reunites with one of his old childhood friends that basically runs the circus then, and they join forces and defeat the Mad Hatter. I liked it because, again, it's a little episode focused on Dick Grayson and kind of playing into his past a little bit. And I like the connection that he had with the childhood friend and all that, and it was just a fun little episode. And like I said, I really liked it compared to the others, which is why it's my number 9. My number 8 is The Joker's Millions. Joker versus the IRS.
Yeah,
kinda. Yeah. No. I really like this episode because it is kind of relatable in a real life sense.
Yeah.
In a potential bad way. In real life, I don't know if it could be pulled off the way it happens, but basically, long story short, an old mob boss dies and puts the Joker on his will to inherit his millions, pretty much. And so Joker went flat broke to apparently a millionaire overnight. And to some of us, that's kind of relatable in a sense. And what the twist at the end is that the mobster actually gave him fake money. So he spent like half of the episode going around, once he inherited these millions, going around spending it everywhere he possibly could, and then realized that he was spending fake money. Yes, it's a bit of a criticism where it's like the stores that he went to and everything and all the stuff that he bought was, the cashier's like, what is this? This is fake money, and didn't get a chance to point it out because Joker was long gone at that point. But you kind of feel bad for Joker, honestly, that he got screwed over so bad, but he deserves it at the same time. And because of that twist, it's a good eye opener for it's a bit of a comedic episode, but it's really relatable in real life too, potentially, and that's what I really liked about that episode. Unfortunately, sorry Joker, sorry Mark Hamill, you're Joker, but that's why I really liked it though, how kind of relatable it is in real life in a sense, as messed up as it is to say. So number 7 is Growing Pains. That one, I believe, is on your list.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we kind of kept the spoilers to my section. So the spoilers section of this episode, as it turns out, the twist that happens is that the girl that Tim Drake is helping out throughout the entire episode, really good connection between the two also, which was nice. But what's so heartbreaking about it is that the girl turns out to be a part of Clayface, and the dad is revealed to be Clayface. And that's what's so heartbreaking about it, is because this piece of Clayface actually develops like feelings for Tim Drake, kind of goes sentient in a sense, and basically no choice, she has to reconnect with Clayface, and she basically just gets absorbed. Robin, Tim Drake, basically, with the help of Batman, I believe, defeats Clayface at the end, but that's what's so heartbreaking about it at the end.
Yeah.
Because they had a really, a nice bond, and Tim was really trying to go out of his way to help her, understandably so. And, just the way everything plays out, but it's just so heartbreaking where even though they won at the end, at the same time, Tim lost, and you really feel for him, and that's why it's a really impactful episode. I feel like, you know.
Yeah, it's a great one. It really is.
Like you said, you'll probably cry a little bit.
Like a bitch.
Yeah, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with crying like a bitch sometimes. So number 6 is Sins of the Father, which we talked about before as well, but basically, like I said before, origin episodes are bangers in this entire series, and it's the the origin story of Tim Drake and how he comes into Batman's tutelage. We pretty much talked everything about that episode, but I obviously my opinions haven't changed on my section. It's my number 6, so it's up there, and it's one of my favorites. And like I said, this is the origin story of one of my favorite in Robin, Tim Drake interpretation. So, yeah, watch that episode. My top 5, Double Talk. Double Talk was the ventriloquist episode, and like we said before, I just going to reiterate what I said before, like the subject matter of mental disorder, mental health, and you just feel so bad for Wesker in this episode, because he really is trying to turn a new leaf and find some kind of stabilization within his life and away from Scarface. And you just feel so bad that his old gang just tried to break him. And but fortunately, this is one of those episodes where it actually ends on a good note. Yeah. And Wesker kind of wins at the end, and great redemption where he pumps Scarface full of lead, and it's so satisfying, right into the wood chipper, literally. So, good job, Wesker. You did it. My number 4 on my list is Mad Love, origin story of Harley Quinn. Again, reiterate what we said before. You just feel so bad for Harley Quinn, even though it's entirely her fault.
Yeah, yes and no.
It pretty much is her fault.
Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, Harley Quinn, Harleen Quinzel, you can even make the argument that she started off like not even the best intentions to begin. She was just trying to make money off.
That is true. That is true. That is true.
So,
well, we should reiterate the abuse is not her fault.
And that's what makes the episode so great, though. Like it brings that subject matter to the forefront. It really this episode really gives her a different dimension after just because to my understanding, like even in the commentary, like they didn't expect her to take off as she did. She just connected with the audience, and then Paul Dini just did his magic again. So. But yeah, but that's why it's my number 4. Number 3 is Never Fear. Yeah, like I said before, like this episode really left a big impact on me as a kid, and even to this day, it's just these last 3 are pretty much like 1, 2, 3, and it could change in any order for me. Like these last like 3 sections are like my top episodes ever in this series, and this one being one of them because, like I said, I find it a very important episode for people, and even in my life nowadays, it's even more relatable now in my personal circumstances nowadays. And like I was saying, like dealing with anxiety and dealing with life and all that, because you're constantly battling that fight of like, should I take the risk, should I not, and the whole thing, and the idea of just like that being wiped and just going for it. Sometimes it's not the best decision to just go for it. Sometimes there is, kind of playing life out at like a chess game,
Yeah.
And I think that kind of that stuff is important to kind of tell, especially kids. I feel like that's an important thing with kids because kids are ruthless, kids are reckless, and I think it's important to kind of teach them that it's okay to kind of step back and just assess something,
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, this episode is really relatable to me, and it's one of those subject matters that I'm kind of passionate about for me personally, and so again, that's why it's my number 3 and all that. Going into number 2, which is Over the Edge, the Batgirl episode. We didn't talk about the spoilers. Do you want me to talk about the spoilers?
Yeah, talk about the spoilers.
Okay, so this is another great Scarecrow episode. Turns out that, again, like we were saying in the in Christian section, is that it's a what-if story. And the what-if story is what happens from Barbara Gordon's perspective, Batgirl. From her perspective, what happens if my dad finds out that I was playing around with Batman all this time? And because what happens is that they're fighting Batman, Tim Drake, Robin, and Batgirl are all fighting Scarecrow, and they're fighting, and Batgirl takes the initiative and goes after Scarecrow on her own, and Scarecrow outflanks her, and basically knocks her in the face with his walking cane, and she falls off like a ridiculously tall building, lands on top of a cop car that happens to have Commissioner Gordon in there, and then he unmasks Batgirl to reveal that it's his daughter, and so then Gordon goes on a citywide rampage war against Batman. Basically finds out in like 2 seconds that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and basically unleashes like the National Guard or pretty much unleashes the police academy on him, on Bruce Wayne, chasing him down. They arrest Dick Grayson during the episode and everything, and so ultimately it does come into a good light though, because it was all a dream scenario at the end.
That was kind of my criticism of it, was that it was all a dream, but at the same time, how else were you going to do it?
Right, exactly.
Unless you said, oh, this was taking place in an alternate universe, because Justice League does establish that alternate universes exist in this animated universe, but at the same time, they didn't establish that yet. It made sense that it was a dream.
Yeah,
that's really
it's one of the situations where the "it's a dream" argument actually it does kind of work. Even though I will admit, I find that setup like a really interesting, like not even what if it. That's an interesting scenario to take a series in a sense. But I was okay with it was all a dream thing too, ultimately. But that what if story is incredible, and it's oh man, like I still can't get over like the moment when Batgirl hit and and especially with like the history between Gordon and Batman, and like I was saying before in his section where it's like them sharing coffee, like some of the context that they kind of reveal in season 4, where they have a good relationship and everything, and seeing like this total 180, the complete opposite, is a really awesome episode, and it kind of catches you off guard if you're watching it throughout the, while you're binging through. It kind of catches you off guard because it happens like that. The episode starts with a raid in the Batcave from Gordon, and it's just an incredible episode. Even though it does kind of pull the curtain out from underneath you a little bit, but that's why it's my number 2. And I remember when I was a kid, like this episode was like, oh shit, like what's going on here, So that was the Over the Edge, phenomenal episode, highly recommend it. And my number 1 is Old Wounds, and just simply because the dynamic of Robin or Dick Grayson kind of breaking off from Batman and kind of becoming his own person is basically what that is about. And it does end on a good note too, where he actually does come back and kind of forgiven. But this is basically like Dick Grayson's like not coming out in that sense, but like I'm my own. Like when he graduates, he's like I'm done mooching off for Bruce. I'm ready to become my own man. And so there's a lot of relatability with that too, in real life and all that. Like that dynamic where it's like some betrayal, some secret keeping, and all that. Like for me, and especially my top 3, like these episodes, in my opinion, are obviously the top tier best episodes because of the subject matter, because of just like the character dynamics and all that. And to me, it it says 1, 2, 3 as it is. But honestly, like if you ask me, like these 3, honestly, like these last 3 were like my hardest to figure out, like where am I going to place them? Because to me, like all 3 of these episodes, my last 3 felt like number one to me.
All right.
So, but yeah, and that's my list.
So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Next year when I do these Batman reviews, I'm hoping to do a top 10 of Batman Beyond. Woo! I think that would be really cool.
I would concur. I mean, someone's got to do something on Batman Beyond. They canceled a Batman Beyond game potentially. They turned down the Spider-Verse director or writer for Batman Beyond in that style. DC, do Batman Beyond stuff, please. We want it. Later, guys.
Oh, my back. You ruined my back.